Ada County, and thank you for tuning in tonight as we go live to discuss all things snow. It is my pleasure to host tonight's event. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Alexis Pickering, and I'm proudly serving as the president of ACHD's Board of Commissioners. Tonight, I will be putting our winter weather experts to the test with a variety of questions that we have received from the public over the years. And I'm very happy to introduce a couple of super important team members of ACHD. First off, we have Jennifer Behringer, who is our Deputy Director overseeing the Maintenance and Operations Department here at ACHD. Joining her is Braden Thompson, a lead worker who supervises a number of our equipment operators and gets a firsthand look at all things snow and snow removal. Thank you both for being here. I'm super excited and appreciate you both for joining me. And I'm sure you're both running on empty or maybe a lot of caffeine at this point after today's storm.
I'll admit I've lost count of the number of cups of coffee I've had today, but I've got the easy job. Braden, what time did our team start today?
So our on-call supervisors were out today at around midnight checking on conditions in the valley. And then the rest of the crew was called in ahead of the storm at 2 a.m.
Oh my gosh, that's so early. I was fortunate to join one of our team members yesterday morning at 5 a.m. We went up to the foothills and I had the opportunity to pick their brains and learn so much about the ins and outs of winter operations. It's a super complex and scientific process, and I'm so happy to have you both here so we can share some of that information with the public as well. So first off, we've got some big questions. How does ACHD prepare for snow?
Well, we start by watching the weather very closely.
Like you tune into Roland Stedham?
That, and we are continuously watching websites such as Weather Underground, as well as the National Weather Service's website, and consulting with their experts as well. Not only that, we also have tools that help us determine air and road temperatures as well, such as the ones referenced in the picture. This is what we call a road temperature sensor. This lets the operator in the truck know exactly what the air temperature and road temperature is while they're out driving around. We also use a various amount of traffic cameras to check on conditions of the roads all over the valley when we are not able to reach all of them. Along with the system we use that is ours called Visala, and it gives us a live snapshot of air temperatures as well as surface temperatures and road temps as well. Based on our findings, we may pre-treat the roads if the conditions allow after we've called in the reinforcements.
Got it. So with that, what materials do you use to treat the roadway?
We use a variety of materials, including salt, a salt sand mix, as well as something called magnesium chloride, which all have a specific purpose.
What's magnesium chloride?
It's essentially a liquid mixture of salt that we use to spray down on the roads. We put it down before the winter weather, and it helps create a barrier to prevent snow and ice from bonding. While it's a great tool, it's not always the most perfect system in the world. It can be greatly impacted by existing weather conditions or changing weather conditions such as wind, rain, or fog. If it rains or if the snow melts too quickly, it can dilute the magnesium chloride, washing it away, and in turn, wasting money and more time. Salt's used to help.
I'm sorry, Braden, you said something that I thought was really interesting with the magnesium chloride, or mag chloride as we say it in shorthand, about the fog. And there's a lot of science behind that, because magnesium chloride is hygroscopic, which means it pulls moisture toward it, kind of like desiccants that you might have in your house. So we get the magnesium chloride on the roadway, and if it's before things ice up, it does prevent that bond. But if we have those foggy conditions, it's actually pulling the moisture from the air, which is then going to pull the moisture to the roadway, which is what we're trying to avoid happening. So that's why the conditions have to be just right. One of the other things you mentioned was wind. So if we get the magnesium chloride onto the ground, that's really kind of a sticky, salty material. So when the wind blows over it, if it's blowing dry snow instead of a wet snow, and it's starting to drift over, that snow can catch on that wet moisture that we put onto that wet magnesium chloride, and then it'll stick to it again, creating more of a slippery situation. So that's why it's such a science when our on-call supervisors are driving around and trying to assess the roads, the road air temperatures, the road temperatures, and determining whether or not magnesium chloride is appropriate to put down for an anti-icing tool.
You're absolutely right. And then we also use salt, which helps to melt and break down existing ice, as well as providing traction. And then when we go to our salt sand mixture, it's another great option that we use in intersections and other problem areas that provide both the ice melting properties as well as traction and more longevity due to the sand nature.
So Braden, I have a big quick follow-up question on that. So do we mostly do salt and sand in intersections, or are there times where we would apply it along a stretch of road?
There are certain sections of our roads that we do apply it that aren't isolated to just intersections. We also apply it in priority hills, bridge decks, school zones, and a lot of our crosswalks that are in the roadway between the blocks.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And there are some areas in the county that we don't use sand at all. So there are certain city downtown core areas that they say no sand, just because it creates more of that material that has to be cleaned up afterwards. So we do straight salt in some of the downtown areas too, and we don't use that. So you're going to see different applications in different areas of the county, and that's why we have so many tools in our toolkit, because it's not a one-stop shop. We'll use different materials in different areas because it's a pretty vast county.
I think I really want to emphasize what you just said, Jennifer, because I hear from folks all the time that are like, I'm seeing this treatment be done here, but why isn't it being done, in my neighborhood? And I think you just hit the nail on the head, so I don't need to repeat it, but there's different treatments for different parts of our county, and we want to customize to the conditions that exist within those communities. That's
Absolutely.
fabulous. Okay, awesome. So how do we react once snow is falling?
First off, we react by getting our operators out in their routes that they have assigned to them and plowing very first to remove the bulk of the snow from the roadway. After that has been removed, then we start applying salt in specific areas where it's required, as well as a salt sand mix.
So what's the difference? Can you explain really what is a salt sand mixture?
So the salt sand differs from our straight salt mixture, whereas the straight salt is just salt that's being loaded into our equipment that's being spread out on the road. The salt sand is a specific ratio that we use to mix our salt with our sand, so that way we have a material that is both providing traction as well as the ice melting capabilities.
Your audio is a little slow. I was wondering, maybe Jennifer, can you answer, can you say that again, Braden?
The difference between the salt and sand and the salt sand mix.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah. So,
that would be great.
So
Yep,
our
that would be
salts,
great.
I kind of hit that. I think we are delayed. Yeah. So really you're going to have different materials that we're putting into different trucks. So we'll put straight salt into some trucks and a salt sand mix into other trucks, again, because there are some areas that we can't use the sand. So we want to get areas with traction. Salt is great for traction. It helps to break down. Once that bond is formed, salt helps to break that down. And then we'll also get sand into some of those areas to help with traction at the intersections. So again, it really depends where we're using it and what material needs to be used at that time. But traction is a big key of that.
Gotcha. Perfect. So I think my next question is, where do we plow typically?
So the highway district, we have over 5,360 lane miles of roadway that we are responsible for. And unfortunately, we can't be everywhere at once. So we have to employ a priority system. And we have 3 priority areas that we take care of. Our first priority for treatment is our arterials, collectors, major intersections, overpasses, bridges, things such as hospitals, fire stations, all the railroad crossings, any kind of school crossing, and then streets that have over a 6% grade.
Okay. Can you quickly define, like, give an example of what an arterial would be?
Arterials are going to be the major roads that the majority of the traffic is taking to get from point A to point B, that have a lot of the high volume traffic that the highway district and Ada County sees every day. Roads such as Overland or Vista or Broadway, roads like that. Those are going to be our major arterial roads.
Gotcha.
And Braden, if I could jump on that, the storm that we saw today was a kind of a teaser of what's to come. And on those major arterial roadways, when the snow comes so quickly and in that short amount of time and so much of it, on those major roadways that are kind of your key areas that are pushing a lot of traffic into and out of the downtown cores, we will sometimes employ a plow team concept. So for the most part, you might see one plow all over the county, one single one operating by itself. But when we shift to a plow team concept, we'll pull 2 or 3 pieces of equipment together, and we'll have 3 operators running along that roadway in tandem to push as much snow off of the roadway. The first one pushes it to the right, the next one takes that part, pushes it to the right, and the next one behind it. So it just pushes the entire thing out so we can tackle more than a single lane in one push. So with the 2-lane, when we have 2 lanes going in each direction, or those roadways that have the center turn lane as well, like a 5-lane road, getting the plow teams employed is kind of a major way that we can get as much snow off as quickly as possible to help cater to get those people in to where they need to go during our morning and evening rush hours.
And I just have a quick follow-up question on that. So with that many lane miles, and we have this priority system in place, like how long does it take for our entire team to get through that entire priority 1 list, assuming there's not a continuous amount of snow? Like how long would that take for our team?
It varies from operator to operator, because not one single area in this highway district in the Ada County is the same. We have a lot of things to deal with throughout different times in the day, such as other traffic on the road, having to pause and come back into the yard to reload on our material. Any kind of emergencies that may pop up from emergency first responders as well. On average, sometimes it can take up to 4 hours to complete just that singular priority 1 section.
Okay. I think that's really helpful for people to know. Like that's how long it will take, assuming there's not continuous snow falling, right? Like, because I think that's the big asterisk, right? So, okay, that's helpful.
And another consideration is they have to come back and reload. So they're carrying material, but that's only a finite amount of material that they're able to carry. So as soon as they're out of salt or salt sand mix or magnesium chloride, they're going to have to come back to the yard, get more materials, and then get back out. So we've had a lot of people in areas like Southwest Boise or Cuna who aren't seeing as much as they think they should see. And part of that is because we have a longer distance to travel. So the operators are getting out, they're running their route, they run out of materials, have to come back to the yard. So there's a little bit more time that it takes to get out to those locations. It's not that those are lower priorities. It's just that it takes time, and the operators have to get out and do their runway, do their routes, and reload. And then again, if we have active snow, then it's just a constant attacking it in battle. And multi-lanes, if they're going to run their route maybe in a clockwise direction, then they've got to go counterclockwise and get the other lane. So it definitely is one of those constantly keeping at it situations.
And I noticed that when I was doing the ride along yesterday morning, that it took about an hour and 10 minutes for my operator to complete and finish out everything that he had in his supply there. So yeah, that was interesting to me. I didn't know that how long it would take. But yeah, driving back to the yard and getting some additional salt and sand was, something that I hadn't considered before. Okay, thank you. So I think with the amount of snow that we've received today and then what's in the forecast, a lot of residents are, naturally concerned about, are we going to see another snowmageddon? And like we did in 2017. And so I wanted to ask you guys, how is ACHD better prepared to handle a significant and consecutive snow event than we were back then?
So Braden, if you don't mind, I'm going to tackle this one, and then you can add a little bit more because I think you were here back then. But I just want to talk a little bit on the materials and how things have changed as far as our equipment from a grand perspective. So we had a whole lot less of everything back in 2017. If you look at even just the number of lane miles that we had back in 2017, we've already doubled what we had back then. I don't have the exact number. It was 2,000 something, like 2,300, and we're already 5,360 and growing lane miles that we have to handle. Back then we had about 120 people that we used for snow fighting, and now we're up to about 159. So we're able to grow as that's growing. The number of plows we had 12 plows back then, and now we have 67 total pieces of equipment, with 43 of them equipped with plows.
Wow.
As far as the amount of material we had on hand, that was another huge lesson learned from Snowmageddon. Because of that, we learned we need to stockpile more salt, more magnesium chloride, and the reject sand that we have. So we've built a bigger shed at both of our locations, both of our operational yards, so we can start every season with the amount of salt that we would need for a Snowmageddon level event. And then we continually get reinforcements. We get the supply added after each use. So we're so much better postured now than we were back then.
Yep. And to add on to that as well, typically during a normal event, we have two different crews that are typically running a 12-hour shift, and then we have a various amount of backup operators. But in the event that we get something like Snowmageddon, we always implement a 24-hour operation system where we have both crews working 12 hours on and 12 hours off.
Gotcha. And then don't we also have contractors on standby versus back in 2017, that wasn't a thing?
Yes.
We do. Yep. That was a lesson that we learned during Snowmageddon as well, because there was so much snow over a long period of time. It was really impacting the neighborhoods to the point where nobody could move. Nobody could get out of their driveways and get out onto the arterials and collectors. So what we have implemented since then is our contractor on-call list. And before every snow call season, we'll call all of the major contractors in the area that have big pieces of equipment like graders, loaders, plows, those kinds of things, because that's what we need to move snow quickly over long periods of time. So we've already made those phone calls to our on-call contractors this week, and we've already started bringing some of them on to those priority areas, the on-call supervisors, as they deem needed.
That's awesome. Yeah, really quick question though, side note. Can you tell us what is a grader? Because I don't think people would know what the difference is between maybe a snowplow versus a grader.
You want to take that, Ray?
Sure, I can. Our grader that's the term we give it. It is a piece of equipment that has a big blade that is hydraulic driven underneath of it, and we use it for a variety of applications, grading slopes on our roads, a lot of our gravel roads. We use it to grade some of the dirt alleyways we have in the city, and it's become a really effective tool to use for snow removal and ice removal, especially when we get the ice that gets really packed down. They have the ability to get enough down pressure through the hydraulic system to actually cut through the ice.
Gotcha.
The plows that we use, that's another one that's interesting, because it's not a whole separate piece of equipment that's only used during snow operations.
Right.
The plow attachments we put on our dump trucks. So we use our dump trucks throughout the year. And then when we're in snow operations, we change it to a configuration for winter. So it'll get a plow attachment on the front, and in the dump area in the back, we have special pieces of equipment that we roll into the back of it that has saddle tanks for the magnesium chloride, and then the sander unit holds the sand and salt. So it's a new configuration for equipment that's a multi-use.
And I just want to emphasize that too, Jennifer, because when I first came to the district, I I mean, you kind of think like all you need is like all this specialty equipment, but that's not a good use of our tax dollars. And we don't want equipment sitting idle either. And so that's why I'm just so impressed where we've bought equipment that we can use in all seasons and swap out those parts, or yeah, that multifunctionality of these trucks, or the mini sweeper. All of those things, right, are super important so that we can continuously put those tax dollars to work. And also those things don't work really well with it when they sit idle. So just another way that we're really trying to maximize that return on investment and not overburden taxpayers. So I just love that about your operations, Jennifer. Anything else about what is different this go around?
I'd also say kind of the increased connectivity and software that we use, and
Yeah.
we're continuously growing in this area. We do still, to a certain extent, use paper maps and post-it notes and handwritten things, but we are continuously gathering more intel about what's out there, those tools that assist us. So we have software that we have loaded with each plow. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words because I wasn't ready for this one, but we have the ability to know exactly how much material we're putting out of each piece of equipment. So it's calibrated at the beginning of the year. That data is recorded, and then we can compile it, so we can see all of that. We can see what each piece of equipment is putting out, to make sure that we're putting down the right amount of material in the right places at the right time. Again, that's a huge stewardship of tax dollars. Kudos to us, because we could just put as much material down and burn it off, as some jurisdictions do. But we know that that's not the best use of taxpayer dollars. We're just throwing all that material on the ground, and then we have to sweep it all back up again. So we've really fine-tuned the amount of salt and sand, if we're doing a mixture, how much we mix it together, and then how much is applied per lane mile, because that's just really critical to get the right amount, so we're not over-applying or under-applying. And some of that technology is assisting us to track that and make sure we're doing that properly. Also, GPS tracking in our pieces of equipment, so we'll know, we can pull up a map and we can see all of our pieces of equipment, all the plows, everything that's out on the roadway. We know where they are and where they've been. So if we ever have somebody who says that we haven't been on the roadway, we can pull it up. All of our vehicles are tracked, so we know that the operators are getting out and hitting those roads multiple times, because we have that ability to do that. And then we talked earlier about just the road and air temperature sensors, and there's other technology that we're looking at that can give us the humidity and moisture levels at the ground level. So we go to a lot of these trade shows to learn what else is out there, because technology has grown so much. And if we don't continue to innovate, then we lose. So it's really important that we're constantly growing our operation and growing with the technology that's out there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I also think too, what I've noticed, I joined the commission and was elected in 2020, but didn't start until 2021. So I was a resident when I experienced Snowmageddon, and I got a lot of feedback when I was on the campaign trail about make sure that we are better prepared next time. It was hammered into me by tons of constituents that I talked to. And I was delighted to see, and I have seen over the last 3 years, just how much the communication chain has improved as well with our cities and our county and other jurisdictions. Director Wong sends out, emails and communicates with those mayors and our state electeds at times about what's coming, how we're preparing for it, and status updates. And so those other elected officials get constant communication about how we're doing, what's happening. And then if they have a challenge, vice versa, we can respond really quickly to them. And it just that type of we're really preventing communication breakdowns from being so forthcoming and keeping those channels open. So that's another big plus I've noticed over the years, that we're really trying to communicate clearly about what we're doing and where we're missing spots if at all possible. Anything else on this one? Okay. So at the end of the day, everyone is part of the team during the winter months, even residents. All of us have a part to play. What are some responsibilities of residents during winter weather?
Braden, if you don't mind, I can take this one too.
Really?
We get a lot of questions about sidewalks.
Yeah.
Our jurisdiction does include sidewalks. So we talk about the right of way. It's where the public can go. So what we do on our end with the sidewalks is maintaining the infrastructure. But all the cities have ordinances. Cities and Ada County have ordinances about clearing obstructions from sidewalks, and that does fall to the adjacent property owner. We have, I don't have that number at my fingertips either, but the number of lane miles of sidewalks is just massive and continues to grow. So it is one of those everybody pitching in together for that. But along those lines, it's most helpful to shovel your sidewalks toward the grass if you can. If you have some patch of where that water can go when it melts, putting it out into the roadways just compounds the problem with snow removal, and we end up playing the moving it all over the place. Ultimately, we all just want the snow to go someplace where it's going to melt freely, and then eventually go down into our drainage system.
Sorry,
Oh,
one quick add to there, Jennifer, because I've noticed just with today's event, like the melting, and now, because folks, I could notice that folks put snow in the roadway from their private residence. That's contributing to also like flooding, for example. Isn't that also something that we see when people don't try to put them in their grass or in their adjacent property?
Yeah, it absolutely can, because when you move that snow back onto the roadway, you're creating more of a compressed snowpack, which then creates that kind of an ice dam of sorts, and it just prevents the water from flowing properly. So it interrupts the natural melting process of the snow. So moving it someplace like to the grass is really beneficial, not just for that, but also because we need that water to go back into the grass and into our aquifer system. So it's just it's a dual benefit along those lines. Also with the bike lanes, we've got more bike lanes added now than ever before. That could be one of the things, difference between Snowmageddon and now. And I think with the huge growth that we've seen in the valley, back in 2017, I think it was somewhere like 436,000 was our population of Ada County, and now we're over 502,000. And it's just continuing to grow. And with that comes a whole variety of multimodal transportation. And there are people who will still ride their bicycles and walking in the snowstorm. So it's really important to keep the sidewalks cleared. It's important to us to come out and clean the bike lanes, especially now that we've got some bike lanes that are separated from the main roadway. So we have other tools. You mentioned our multi-hog. That's also one of those tools that we can use for sweeping or snow plowing. So huge benefit there. Along those lines, where all that snow ends up going, I mentioned the storm drains, and when it melts, where does it go? So residents can also help by keeping an eye on their nearby storm drains. We watch them as well. We've got our sweepers out when they can. When it's snowing, our sweepers can't really operate appropriately. So once it melts, then we can get the sweepers out. And then we also have heavy vac trucks that can clear the drains. But when we're in a snow event, it's really important for residents that know they have a storm drain near them to kind of clear that ice and snow and any other debris that has accumulated off of it. And it's going to take a few times during a multi-day storm event to keep clearing it. But that's going to just benefit so that we don't have that localized flooding when we have the melts.
Thank you for sharing that, Jennifer, because that happened when we had that windstorm this fall. I have a lot of trees in my neighborhood, and a ton of trees, the leaves came down, and a neighbor had some folks over, and that person was parked on the storm drain. And so our road was flooding. And so anyway, I think since then I've been taking a really keen interest of personally managing that storm drain. But what can people do if they find a storm drain is not draining effectively? What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is to get in contact with ACHD to report an issue. And we can put that information on the screen now. During normal business hours, you can call us directly. So we'll have that number. Our main line is on the screen now. It's 208-387-6955. 6100, or submit a TELUS, and that is also on the screen. So that's through our website. But I have to reiterate that is during business hours. So we don't have somebody actively listening to or taking that phone, answering that phone outside of business hours. And when we get the TELUS through our website, we're not going to see those until our admin team comes in on Monday morning or after a weekend. So if it's a weekend or outside of our normal hours, we do have our on-call supervisors who are always ready to take those calls. And we get those calls through the non-emergency dispatch line. And that phone number is 208-377-6790. So I know a lot of people don't like to call it because they hear, it's police dispatch, but that absolutely is the way to report an emergency, especially if it's something that's threatening life or property. Those things that really are emergencies. Let us know if you've got flooding starting in the area. Call the emergency dispatch. If there's an area that's really an intersection that's slick and nobody can get through it, it might be one of those that we just we haven't gotten to because they're going back to get more material or whatever, or an area that's not even an intersection and it could just have gotten iced over without us even knowing it. So it's absolutely important just to let us know if those things are really outside of the norm that we need to tackle.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jennifer. So I think now's a good time to see if we've got any questions from the audience and our online viewers. And while we drop those on the screen, I do have a question for you guys. So while that's coming up, I know the news is covering it, but when should we expect more snow? And obviously with the caveat that things change and can change really quickly. So what should folks be doing to prepare, and when should that next big snowfall be coming?
I know Braden's been watching the weather, so I'm going to let him tackle that one.
So we try to watch a few different models and do our best to determine when the storm is going to hit. Best thing I can say for people to prepare is use patience and be safe when they actually do get out on the roads, and understand that we are coming to take care of the roads. And it just depends on how heavy the storm hits and when it hits. I know this week, the next couple of days, we're looking at getting more weather in. So our operators are going to be very busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think the weather forecasts are showing. I think it's also important to note how much they can change. So Brady's been watching the different models, and it's not our job to predict. We listen to what the models are showing us, but we do have some folks on our staff that are almost pseudo weather analysts. So they're really good at watching the radar as it's coming in. You see the storms coming out from over Oregon. You see the front maybe coming up from the south. We know how those interact. And Boise, the valley that we have here in Boise is so unique that whatever happens around us might not happen here. And then within Ely County, we have all these microclimates even. So you can be on one end of the county and see something completely different from the other end.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I see we've got a question. So why do I see plows moving without the blade down?
There's a various different amount of reasons why. Sometimes there's instances during a snow event where to the general public there is snow on the ground. Unfortunately, with the design of these plows, they use a double stacked carbide blade to help cut the ground, and those are limited to how far they can get and how close they can get to the road surface. So they can take the large majority of the snow, but they can't remove 100% of it. And again, going back to wasting materials, if we were to have that plow down all the time, we would be constantly changing out plow blades and burning through our materials and causing excessive wear on equipment and the road. And other times it could be due to an equipment malfunction, and it's safer for that plow to be up in the air and not on the ground as the operator's taking it back to the shop to have our mechanics look at it as well.
So another follow-up question to that. So would, for instance, in my ride along yesterday, we didn't have the plow down when we were going to our route or when we were coming back to restock. So they wouldn't do that because they don't want to impede and take too much longer, right? Because they've got to get back out to where they want to go, right? Or is that not really a factor in that case?
That's not much of a factor. Our operators are all really good at working in a cohesive function. They all work together and communicate really well. If one operator is passing through another operator's area to come back and get more material, they're all usually pretty good at helping take care of anything that may need plowed down on the road while they're on their way back in. And the only other time they would use their discretion to not have that plow down is if the road conditions are satisfactory to where having the plow down would not be of use.
There are also some other factors that within Ada County. So Ada County Highway District is responsible for the local roads. We are not responsible for the state highways. So ITD, they'll come out and they'll plow their roadway. So any roadway that has a state highway designator. So some of the common roadways that you might know, like Chinden or Broadway, those are state highways. So our operators might be traveling on those roadways to get to their routes. So we're not going to have our plows down on roadways that we're not responsible for, just because it's that part of that agreement is part of it is what do our blades do to the roadway. So that's just one of those courtesies that we have between the organizations. So as we're traversing an ITD roadway, we probably won't have our plows down as we're getting out to another route.
That's another question we get a lot, Jennifer. So let's dive into that a little bit. So people will say, why are the conditions so bad on Eagle Road or what have you? So we'll tell you right now which ones are not ACHD roads. So that is Eagle Road. It's
Parts of Eagle Road.
Chinden.
Yeah, so
Parts
parts
of
of
Eagle
Eagle
Road.
Road. If it's
Yep.
Highway 55, but
Mhm.
then the areas north of. See, you're putting me on the spot, and I got to try and remember my
State
map.
Street.
So the north part of Eagle Road, where it gets into the city of Eagle, is
Yeah.
not. That is ours, and then the rest of it, where it's Highway 55, is ITD.
The high-speed Eagle Road portion is ITD's jurisdiction, as well as Chinden and Broadway, which confuses a lot of people, but that is historically and has been and is a highway, state highway. And I know I'm missing some.
Meridian
State
Road.
Street.
Meridian.
Yep, Meridian Road
Part of
and
Meridian, part of
State Street from Gary Lane over to west. So the portion of State Street that's east of Gary Lane that goes into downtown Boise, that is in our jurisdiction, but the portion that is west of that is not.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us again? And so isn't it a portion of Meridian Road?
Yeah, their portion connects. Braden, do you know off the top of your head what part?
I believe it's from the south side of Interstate 84 all the way into Kuna until you hit the main part of downtown Kuna.
Yeah. So the north side of the interstate is ours.
Yes.
Okay. And then obviously the interstate is ITD as well as the connector, correct?
Correct.
And Front and Myrtle.
Yes.
So that also
State
stumps a
highways
lot
have
of
to
people.
connect. That's part of it. Yeah. So you connect those major roadways, and part of that is with the connector coming in, it needs to connect, not just being a connector, but the state highway needs to connect to the others. So that's where you get Front and Myrtle. They're connecting to Broadway, which then connects out back to the interstate. And yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's another question. Does ACHD take care of parking lots too? Braden, you want to take that? Go for it.
We do not. The highway district does not own parking lots outside of our right of way. Any kind of parking lot for a business or anything outside of the ACHD right of way is going to be the responsibility of that property owner.
Got it.
I think we Highway 21 also.
Yes.
I had to double check my list. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Logan. Yeah. How do temps factor into what we do to prepare for the road? So what are some temperature thresholds? Can you talk a little bit about that science-y part of this?
Great question.
So when our operators and our supervisors are out prior to the storm determining, they have a general rule of thumb for the effective temperatures of our materials, and that correlates with the temperatures outside. With the magnesium chloride, typically anything above 36 degrees, it does not become effective because of how hygroscopic it is. Above 36 degrees, it actually can have a tendency to become slimy and actually cause further slick conditions. So we only try to use that when it's in conditions below 36 degrees. And then it also has a lower temperature that it's effective to as well. The lower end of that being around 16 degrees. And once we get down to that colder temperature range, it's really going to start not being able to break through any of the ice, and it could also cause more ice issues down the road as the event carries on.
That's super helpful. And I was wondering too, with looking at the forecast, again, it could change. But what also was a compounding factor with Snowmageddon was that we had a lot of snow, and then it got really cold, and then we got more snow, and it really just kind of compacted and cemented, and it just stayed there, right? Versus with like today's event, warmed up, it snowed a lot, then the snow stopped, and then it warmed up a little bit, and it kind of that natural process kind of happened. And so at what point, like what temperature potentially does snow just stay there and there's nothing we can, like no salt or sand or plow is going to basically unearth that that ice or snow?
Typically when we get to temperatures around that 16 degree and colder mark, that's when you really start to see things start to resist the applications that we're using out on the roadways. When you get below the effective temperature range of the magnesium chloride, and even when we combine it in a pre-treating method with our granular material, that does help lower the effective temperature by a few degrees. But even then, once it gets that cold and traffic starts to get onto that snowpack before the plows are able to get out to that specific portion of their route, it causes an ice bond very quickly, and we can't get through it. And it's a game of catch up at that point until we get temperatures that actually work in our favor to help break up that bond of the snow and ice off of our roadways.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's helpful because I think naturally people think that we have a tool to remove it no matter what. And sometimes nature throws us a curveball that we can't address, at times. So I think that that's really helpful for folks to know about. So here's another question. Can the general public buy and use magnesium chloride?
So Logan, while I saw that one pop up, I went onto the internet and I asked that exact question because we have contracts. So we start every year, we set up a contract, and we have deliveries. So we're buying in bulk. So as far
And where
as
do we get our delivery from, Jennifer? Can you explain that?
for the magnesium chloride?
Or generally like our salt and all that good stuff?
Salt, yeah. So salt is mined right out of the Great Salt Lake. So that comes up from Salt Lake City. The magnesium chloride, I'm not sure where it originates from, but I know that we use a vendor here in Idaho who helps with transportation. Braden,
it comes from Salt Lake as well.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're all natural ingredients. So you're talking about stuff that's coming out of the ground. But in my quick Google search, it does look like you can buy magnesium chloride. Definitely Amazon has everything, right? Walmart Supercenter apparently has it. In these big jugs. So something I've learned.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. We already covered the parking lot question. Okay, and I think we talked about in case there was any snow on the remaining roadway. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we're at a great place to wrap up. Especially since you both need to get to bed and be ready for more weather tomorrow. We've got a long few days ahead of us. But folks, for those of you that are tuning in or watching this after the fact, if you have a question or need to report an issue, you can easily reach us at achdIdaho.org/tellus. It's there on the screen. We have an amazing new website with a really great button that says report an issue. It's super easy. Really encourage you to do that. And again, I want to thank you both again so much for joining us online, taking the time, answering these really great questions. And thank you all to the viewers who took the time to watch this. We really appreciate you all doing your part to ensure we can get there safely. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Stay safe, everyone.
We'll get some good rest and be ready for whatever tomorrow may bring. Good night.